Hey folks, Joe Valley here. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Quiet Light podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by my Amazon guy. I know the founder, Stephen Pope, personally, and you've seen him all over YouTube sharing free educational content. If you run an Amazon business, you've got to check it out. If you need someone to level up your PPC, SEO, design, and manage your Amazon catalog, check him out at myamazonguy.com. Today's guest is an expert in all things Shopify. I'm telling you, folks, the knowledge bombs that were dropped throughout this podcast were fantastic. Our guest runs a company called Ether Cycle. His name is Kurt Elster, and it's absolutely fantastic. None of it, though, is rocket science. That's the key thing here. Everything he talked about is fairly simple. You can implement it on your own store and improve your conversion rate and improve your profit and improve the value of your business. Let's just jump right into it and go. Here we go. Hey, Kurt, welcome to the Quiet Light podcast. How are you today?
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a delightful fall day.
I can tell because you've got a jean jacket on and you dressed warmly. I'm in North Carolina, so I still have a t-shirt on. Whereabouts are you?
We're in Chicago, but this time of year, potentially I'm either dressed for the weather or fashion sweaty, one of the two.
You could be wearing like a snowsuit too, right? I mean, I know it's only September. This is going to air in October, but you ever had snow this early? Probably not, right? I'm from Maine.
2 years ago, we had snow on Halloween.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it was not great for my toddler who just wanted to go trick-or-treating.
So my kids are now in college, and yes, we're going to talk about you and what you do and how you're going to help the audience in a second, but my kids are in college now. We used to go trick-or-treating in Maine, just very much like Chicago weather-wise. And, you'd bundle up and it would be nice and kind of okay weather when you go out trick-or-treating, but by the time you're done, it's absolutely freezing. And in 2006, we moved to North Carolina in August. And the first time we went out trick-or-treating, it blew my mind. Kids are out. I'm walking around in jeans and a t-shirt, holding a beer. I'm not cold at all. It was the best Halloween I've ever had. So folks, if you want to get your Halloween on, move south and stay warm, especially for the kids. It was great. Anyway, Kurt Elster, tell the audience who you are, what you do. I know we connected. First, a shout out to Ezra Firestone and Blue Ribbon Mastermind. We connected through that group there.
Jack Nasty.
For those.
That's Ezra.
Make that. Yes. Do it again. Go ahead.
Jack Nasty.
That's totally Ezra. Oh, man. You can't tell if he has his shirt on or off on that one. Yes, Ezra, I'm calling you out for taking your shirt off too much these days. But Kurt, tell us about yourself and what you do.
Sure. I've worked in e-commerce almost my entire adult life. I've been a Shopify partner for the last decade. And we've worked exclusively on Shopify stores for probably 8 years now. And so I live, eat, breathe e-commerce as a result. And so I host a podcast about e-commerce, and we run a Shopify agency, just like a lot of theme development, store setup, store migrations, conversion rate optimization, general strategy support. And then additionally, we've got a few Shopify apps of those, one is successful, but it's like a pre-order campaign manager. So with that, I've quite a bit of experience with what works in growing, scaling, operating an e-commerce store. And truthfully, as tools have gotten better over time, and I've watched it happen, they become more accessible. It creates more competition and things change. And then like when 2020 rolled around, man, that accelerated e-commerce adoption. And then things really changed because now customers are also they have enough experience where like they are sophisticated in the ways of e-commerce as well. Like often customers are aware of drop shipping. Oh, I already started. I got going on here. Let's stop there.
Keep going. Customers are aware of drop shipping and they don't like it because it's going to take too long to get the product. Where were you going with that?
Oh, when buying online, I think once you've gotten past like the research phase of, yes, I know what I want. This is the thing I want. I want to buy this thing. Now the next step is, well, who am I going to order it from? Because generally I'll have a lot of options. It could be a series of websites. It could be online stores. It could be marketplaces, which a majority of the time that's going to be Amazon, but not necessarily always. And I think ultimately, regardless of what you sell, people are going to go with the option where they're like, this is the one that reduces risk the most. So like the one that feels safest to them. And so customers have gotten more sophisticated and they live through the pandemic and lockdown and shipping it. And they just want to know, when I give you my credit card number, am I going to get my stuff? And with drop shipping, with Amazon, with all these things, a lot of people, not necessarily everybody, but a lot, feel most comfortable buying direct from the real brand, from the manufacturer. There's this perception that like, well, they made it, they own it, they have it, I'm going to get the real thing. Like sometimes you get counterfeit stuff off Amazon. That's scary. Not always, not often, but people know it. It happens. It's in the back of their mind.
So the agency, and I'm going to butcher is it Ether Cycle? Am I pronouncing this right? Okay, so that's the agency, and you're a Shopify partner. What the heck does that mean? Is it easy to get that label? Does it make you super important, or are you just like everybody else? Help me out with that.
So there are levels to being a Shopify partner. Okay. I think last I checked, anybody could just join, could become a Shopify partner, in which they go, hey, here's resources, here's tools. Like you could fire up a dev store. It's not going to cost you anything. They're saying, come play in our sandbox.
Right.
So I believe anyone could just go try it, become a Shopify partner. At which point then you could create and submit an app, submit a theme, or if you've done a few stores, you could like fill out an application and become Shopify expert. And any of those would be very exciting. Truthfully, themes is the hardest one to get a theme in the theme store. They're just extremely selective. I think apps is probably the easiest because in that process, they're like, hey, here's what we want to see. Here's what you need to change. Like the expectations are made very clear. And then for being a Shopify expert, where they say, all right, we know this person has experience and a good reputation. That I don't know what you got to do to get that these days. It's tough. Like there's a Shopify experts directory.
Can't you
and
just
then on top of that,
keep hitting the Ezra Firestone button there because he's always wearing Shopify, clothing when he's online. He must have some special deal with them. Is he one of their experts?
No,
he's not either?
I believe he's an affiliate partner.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because he uses them for a lot. He uses Shopify for all of his e-commerce stuff. Like we built his overtone hair care. We built the theme that runs on Shopify. It was already on Shopify. It was headless. And then in January, we designed and developed this custom theme. It was cool.
This is not the Ezra show, but overtone hair care, is that one of his products?
Yeah. Yeah, he bought that.
I didn't know that.
It's like conditioning hair dye.
Conditioning for the man bun?
Yeah. I don't think he's dyeing his hair quite yet. Maybe. But yeah, you could.
A lot lately. Yeah.
It's like hair dye and conditioner all in one.
No kidding. All right, maybe I need to buy that myself. For those watching,
just for men.
Yeah, for those watching instead of listening, you're going, yeah, that's right, Joe. You should. Anyway, Kurt, what do you guys specialize in at Ether Cycle? I know that you did a presentation about split testing, but you do a lot more than that. What do you guys specialize in?
So certainly, I would like to think that the theme design and development is our core competency. I really feel like that's the thing we're best at. And in doing that, there's a dangerous word that gets thrown around, BP, best practices. And where there's always someone on social media yelling like, this is best practice, that's best practice, or somebody's publishing a study. It's like this, that. I don't think best practices in e-commerce are particularly a realistic thing. In fact, I think they're kind of dangerous.
Wouldn't it last like 3 days and then something changes?
There's so much that could change. And I think more importantly, the audience for an e-commerce site could be wildly different. I can go online, I can have a crate motor for $10,000 shipped from Ford to my house. That's e-commerce. I can also go online and buy shapewear for $30. Right. That's e-commerce. Totally different audiences. 100% of all of that changes other than the fact that a transaction occurred on the internet. And to say like, well, this is best practice, I think it's just a wildly irresponsible way to go about things. When like we're saying like best practice for who? Best practice for Best Buy or best practice for the guy who's selling print on demand t-shirts? That's my issue with it. Is it like just kind of sets up this false expectation of, well, just do what the experts say, who are winging it, and you'll be okay. I think you got to, if you can, and not everybody can, I think you have to test as much as is reasonable.
Okay, well, what's reasonable? Big question, right? And how do you test? How do you decide what to test? There's so much to do. And I've said this on the podcast before. I thought I knew my customer best back when I was running my e-commerce store. And my developer, I didn't have an agency. I guess he was an agency at the same time. He finally, convinced me to do split testing. And turns out I was actually wrong every time, and I was hurting when I thought I knew my customer best. So
That's the best situation because you just uncovered some hidden profits and like loose change lost in the couch every time you have a test where like you were wrong and the alternate is better.
Every single time. His name is David Addison, and he was right that I should do split testing. He never lets me live that down. Anyway, so like there are no best practices for it, but how do you decide, where to start? I mean, there's so much on every page. Where do you go? How do you begin?
The low tech counterintuitive thing, because the issue with split testing is you have to have a ton of traffic. And in addition to that, you have to have a ton of transactions, and you need to be able to figure out how to work Google Optimize, which is free and not that hard. I swear to God, this is not that tough.
Okay, so
technically,
we're not talking about a platform like Amazon. We're talking about your own storefront. Let's call it Shopify in this case. And what's a ton of traffic? And
I think realistically, we need to be minimum 15,000, 20,000 visitors a month is where you're going to start to be able to do this. But even with that, like you can only run so many tests before you're going to get statistically significant results. And like tools like Google Optimize now will try and save you from yourself from making mistakes around like, hey, you need to let this test run longer because none of this is accurate yet.
Right. I was going to say, if you've got a lower volume of visitors on a monthly basis, does that just mean you have to, if you've got, 7,500 instead of 15,000, does that mean you have to run the test twice as long, or is it still not a useful test?
You have 100%. You'd have to run it longer, but then like it starts to introduce other variables to it. Right. And so I think like minimum, you got to run it for 2 weeks, regardless of the level of traffic. Because think about this. People usually get paid on Friday every other week. And so whether or not a test fell on a situation where it had 2 Fridays versus 1, like that can actually swing it. That can make a big difference depending on what the test is.
It's amazing. Life is not that complicated. This is something that's like, I've never thought of that, Kurt. It's never occurred to me. I've been self-employed since 1997. And it never occurred to me that I need to let it run through people's pay periods.
And again, this is where audience matters. So
we make it so hard.
We saw that effect really impact sales on a store that sold jewelry. It sold moderate jewelry. It was not costume jewelry. It was not like designer. It was right in the middle. And those pay periods had an absolute effect on the store sales versus we also worked on a store that sold premium linens, including like personal shoppers for celebrities sent the stuff to houses in the Hollywood Hills. Like that was the difference in market here. That store, you could graph their daily conversion rate, like all their KPIs. You could graph that and it would track with how the stock exchange had performed that day. Totally different markets. Wow. Like if I'm spending hundreds of dollars on linens for a guest bedroom, that's very different, right, than how a lot of stores are selling. And so when you hear those best practices, like those totally different things, different audiences at different places, different, et cetera. And so that's kind of what drives me nuts about it. Ultimately, like what's the thing that's changing here? Really, it's the audience, the people, right? That's the thing. Like I hate the phrase consumer. It makes it sound like locusts. They're people. You're a person. Your customers are people. I think the place to start to learn what you should do to figure out what those best practices are, get your customers on the phone. No one wants to do this. And I get it. It's weird. And like, I'm a millennial. If the phone rings, like we go hide in the closet. It's terrifying. And God help me if someone leaves me a voicemail. I will start crying.
Can't you just snap or text your customers? No, I'm kidding. I did it. I did it. And I learned an awful lot during the last downturn in the economy in 2008, 9, and 10. And I had a subscription program and people were just canceling. And so I'd pick up the phone and call and see if it was the product, if it was the service, if it was something else. And you know what I learned? They were just doing it to tighten the belt. The one that stands out the most is, no, I haven't lost my job, but my neighbor did. And therefore I'm canceling my subscription. sometimes you learn that you just can't do too much about anything. So yeah, pick up the phone and call. That's interesting. Easy.
Yeah. So the easiest way to do it is you go, all right, who bought in the last 30 days or like maybe 6 weeks? And you go, all right, like I could filter it pretty easily. Like give me all the ones that were paid and delivered and didn't get refunded. And then email those people. I go, hey, I'll give you a $50 gift card if you'll just talk to me for 30 minutes about your experience. Because I want to make a better product, better store. I just want to talk to you. It's my brand. I'd love to hear from real customers. You get something very genuine where you're going to also give them the reward. You give them a reason to spend their time with you. And then out of that, you're really only going to, like, if I reached out to 50, I'm lucky if I get 3 to 5 who actually show up to the call. But that's all you need, right? To be able to develop insights like you just did with that, with your subscription program, as opposed to like guessing or going like, I'm my best customer, so whatever I say goes. When you're starting out, that's the best way to do it. But later, you have the resource. And so talk to those people. And like, once you've talked to 5, well, maybe there's something that all 4 of them said. You go, oh, well, the thing they're suggesting to me is probably the best practice. Now let's implement that. And then can we test it? Can we see if that makes a difference? Ideally, you split test it. But if not, you could try and do the totally not scientific method of try it both ways for 2 weeks back to back and see which performs better.
So sending out a survey would not work. You got to pick up the phone and call them. And you've got potentially a huge list of customers. Can you ask those same questions and get similar results with less effort by sending out a survey? Do you think you're not going to get the survey responses?
I think you do it both ways. I like it both ways. And if like your apps, I don't want to give people the out of like, all right, you could just do the survey and not talk to them on the phone. Just because getting the people on the phone is so unbelievably valuable to be able to like talk in real time. And, you know, the people you do talk to, especially if like you're doing it as the brand owner, often they will become brand advocates. And so there's some extra bonus effects there.
Yeah.
But we've had tremendous insights by doing surveys with people and just asking them like, hey, would you buy from us again? If we disappeared next week, who else would you buy from? And like, oh, now like you'll see a list of your competitors. So I do love doing the mass survey as well, where we just go, all right, let's just email everybody from the last 180 days who made a purchase, send them to a survey form. And then at the end of the survey form, it spits out like, here's a one-time use coupon code for you.
Yeah, I asked knowing what the answer was. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both. And I personally love the pick up the phone and call. Of course, I'm not a millennial, I don't think. I looked at this yesterday, Kurt. It's kind of funny.
You had a geriatric millennial? Or are you like right over the cusp?
I think maybe I am because I was born in 65. Yes, people, I was born in 65. I think I'm the very, very last year that I could be considered Gen Z or millennial. I don't know. Okay, now I'm just sound like an idiot. It was yesterday that I looked at this, and today I cannot remember.
I think that would make you Gen X.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yes,
which sounds way cooler than millennial.
Thank you. I think my son. You're right. My kids are millennials. That's born 1985 and after. I think maybe no. I don't know.
80. I'm 83, so maybe I didn't make the cut. Oh no.
I'll just stop. Let's move on.
No, I want to do another 20-minute on which generation is best.
Somebody send me an email, straighten me out, let me know. It's funny, you know, we were on a group call the other day, and with all of our advisors, we've got 15 advisors on the team now, and a couple are, younger than me. Everybody's younger than me on the team, but somebody said something about, we did something in 2010. It's actually when Jason sold my business back in 2010. And one of the advisors, I'm not going to name names, said, damn, I was in high school in 2010. And that just made us all feel very old and made us think he was very young. But, he sold a business for 7 figures by the time he was 28. So he's fine. He's fine. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Tangent. I bet you he knows all about split testing and doing it right. All right. So we want to definitely test for more than 2 weeks. We want to pick up the phone and call the customer if we can.
That's the best way to get the test ideas.
Test ideas first, pick up the phone and call, and then test for 2 weeks. But what are we testing? We're testing new products. We're testing new language. I mean, you're going to get new language from the customer. How do we know where to go?
So that when you do the survey, the wide survey, the incredible thing that often comes out of that is like key phrases. And the best converting headlines, body copy, bullet points that we have ever produced. And that's a really easy thing to split test in Google Optimize. It's like all point and click, there's no code, is to find these like nuggets of headlines. And let's say you're brand new, you can't send out a survey. I'll go through people's reviews for like really similar products, and you'll be able to find great pull quotes that way that you could turn into headlines. So I like that a lot. And truthfully, on conversion rate, that's like just that copy split testing is some of the absolute biggest wins we've ever had, especially when we pull them from surveys. Because how customers talk about products, not necessarily how you talk about products. And so it's nice to be able to pull that in.
Are you doing multiple choice? Are you giving them the headlines, or are you allowing them to add an other when you're asking them about headlines?
No, in the survey, we would just go I like all general questions for the most part, just open-ended. And then I'll run through that, and I'll try and I'll run it through a text tool where I could find like, find every 5-word phrase in this thing, and then sort them by frequency. And then suddenly you'll see, if you get really lucky, like you'll discover like, oh, there's this like 3-word phrase, this 5-word phrase that 25 people use to describe our product. Oh, okay. That means I should definitely give that a shot. Like work that into a headline.
What is that text tool?
The worst part, I think it's Text Mechanic.
Okay.
I'd have to verify it.
Text Mechanic to be verified. Is this something you do for all of your clients at EtherCycle, or do you do it for your own products? Do you just recommend to them how to do it? Do you guide them, coach them? How's it work?
I recommend everybody do it. We perform, but we could conduct those things for people. Most people aren't necessarily interested, don't want to do the work, don't see the value in it. And it's just such low hanging fruit.
It's math, right?
Yeah. There's not it really is not difficult to do, to set up a survey and send it out. Like you have all the tools, you've done all these individual things before. It's just constructing it in a different way.
It's a shame. It's a shame that, it's clear math and numbers that they could increase profit by doing some of these things, but they don't want to do the work. I guess it's not your job to convince them otherwise, right? To do it. There's so many things I think entrepreneurs, and myself included, when I was an e-commerce entrepreneur and today running Quiet Light, there are things that I can do and should do. And I do follow my advice most of the time in terms of always, in my case, I'm always telling people to train for their exit. And I do that. I know my numbers and I know what my business is worth. And I guide the business towards an eventual exit someday, probably to our team. But why do you think people don't make the effort when you can see clearly that if you can increase your conversion rate by 2%, that it's going to add X amount to your bottom line? What's the issue? Are we all just too busy, too focused on gross revenue, or what?
I think we all have our blind spots, and we all fall victim to letting like more immediate pressing needs or more immediate gratification, like wins, take precedence. I think it's just a matter of like the squeaky wheel. There's no one clamoring to be like, send me a survey. Please send me a survey. I want to fill it out so bad. Like you don't have that, but you do have like, people calling and being like, where's my order? Where's my stuff? We got to solve for that. Hey, and then it's like shiny toy syndrome. Like there's nothing sexy about sending out a survey or calling people on the phone. Nothing at all. It's a chore. No one wants to do it. But then you hear like, social media is always like, here's a screenshot of like how I made $100 million in one day because I just installed this one app. Right.
Of course. Yeah,
and that stuff always ends up being stealing your attention.
Yeah. Let's talk about something simple that everybody can do. Is there a particular font that should be used on your website versus another?
Okay. So we talked about like copy and content was realistically what the greatest conversion rate hack. Like it's not design, it's not layout. That stuff is nice, but it's window dressing versus the content is really like the thing that makes or breaks you. But I got to be able to read the content. Readability by far is like one of the most important things to get right, even in terms of accessibility. Like if your site, The issue is brand owners, especially if you're in like fashion apparel, as designers, we go subtle is sophisticated. And so we've got like, all right, I got my 12-point font. It's in light gray and it's on a dark gray background. And we hope someone can read that. And you know what? It's a challenge because we're edgy. Well, then they're not going to. They're going to, your biggest competitor's Google. They're just going to go back and go to somebody else. And so the web's like 95% text. You know, you got to read products and headlines and descriptions and all that stuff. And so if you just make the site easier to read, that's like the number one immediate conversion rate win I always start with when like refreshing a site. So it's like minimum 16-point body font. Make sure it's, you know, nice high contracts. I'll do like printer's black 333, the hex code on a white background, you know, FFF, FFF, that kind of thing. So it's just like, give me black text on a white background and make it big enough. And then you want to get fancier, you can start fiddling with line height. And in school, I used to be like, I got to write a 10-page paper unless I use my friend double space, right? Like you actually want
shrink the margins or
you want
increase
1.5 spacing, and you want to shrink the margins. Like if you've ever read it, everybody's seen a newspaper, I assume. It's got really narrow columns. There'll be like 3 to 5 words in a column.
Yeah,
that's really easy to read. There's a reason why we read like that. And then when you go on like an e-commerce website, they're called the text has to go edge to edge. And so it's like on a 30-inch monitor, you're reading this giant line. No one's doing it. No one reads on the internet. I wouldn't say because it's hard to read.
Yeah. And when I looked at your site this morning for our call, it reminded me of a buddy of mine's site. And he is a designer. And I can see that you're involved in this a little bit as well. So I would encourage people, and I'm not, again, this is not a pitch podcast, but I'd encourage people to go to ethercycle.com and just look and go. And strangely enough, when I opened up your site this morning, I actually started to read the content.
Aha.
Yeah, imagine that. The other one is popkitchen.net. It's literally my roommate from my freshman year of college on. We're still friends today. And he's an incredible designer working for well-known names, putting stuff in Target. And there's who's the Midwest woman that is very much like Martha Stewart. Cannot think of her name. Did all the design.
Oh, geez, I'm in the dead center of the Midwest, and I don't know.
You are. I can't think of her name. Anyway, potkitchen.net or ethercycle.com to get a really good example of how the content pops. Both of them are fantastic.
Yeah, this Pop Kitchen, he really has a great sense of typography. I'm like a big type nerd. Like I just want to go back and do letterpress and start printing out Gutenberg Bibles. Like that's the kind of typography shenanigans I want to get into. But when you make stuff easy to read and you treat a web page like a magazine layout, it performs much better, regardless of audience, regardless of product and offer. Just make the darn thing easier to read is step one.
Yeah, imagine that. Again, some of these things are not hard, but maybe it goes back to everyone trying to look up and follow best practices. But we're talking about some basic stuff. Make it easy to read. Doesn't have to be fancy or pretty. Make it easy to read. Call your customer and have a conversation with them, right? This is how you and I are getting to know each other, right? We're talking on a podcast. Next time I see you, I'll know you more versus just sending an email or text back and forth. Not real complicated stuff. So make it easy to read. Any other tricks there? There's not any particular font or anything like that, or you just named a few, but there's nothing that is best practice.
Like as people worry about site performance, and one of the things that really impacts the Google Core Web Vitals, which is like the 6 KPIs they use to determine if your site is slow or fast, according to a Google engineer locked up somewhere. Loading an external font as opposed to just like a regular system font really slows down one of those KPIs. And so an easy thing to do if you want to make the site easier to read, oftentimes, is not load Google fonts. Like all my sites use Google fonts. I love it. Like I want the look. But if we want to be realistic about performance, dump the fonts.
So what font, how do you pick a not Google font? Where do you get them? What are you talking about? I'm not a designer. Help me out.
Okay. All computers, Mac or Windows, have like a handful of fonts you have a pretty good idea are going to be installed. It's like Arial, Verdana, Times New Roman, Georgia. If you just stick to those, They always look great. They render right. They'll always work. You don't have to have this big load because the font is fairly big. It's like loading a large image. And then the browser has to render it, and it's harder for it to render than a photo. And so using the system fonts, just like those classic fonts, really helps. There's a website, CSS Font Stack, that will give you like you're like, I want this, and it'll be like, okay, here's like the stack to use, and it'll give you like here's 5 fonts that'll work on 98% of devices.
Okay, I don't know what the hell it means. This is the stack to use, but I'll skim right over that.
You just pass that info on to your developer friend.
Okay, thank you. There's one thing that as a consumer, as a person, when my wife and I are shopping, that sometimes we like and sometimes it just pisses us off. And that is if you spend X amount of dollars, we'll give you free shipping. Yeah. $35. And I'm at even on Amazon sometimes now, and I'm a Prime customer. I feel like if I spend a little bit more, I'm going to get it a little bit quicker. And I always need stuff. Like we have the joke in our house, but we needed that, right? So Amazon shows up every day. We need that. But does it hurt from a conversion rate standpoint to play those little tricks that are so obvious to the customer that you're just trying to increase the average ticket and then you'll pay for the shipping?
I think 10 years ago, like the prevailing wisdom even now is the number one reason people abandon checkout is unexpected shipping expense. I think in a post 2020 world, that expectation around you have to have free shipping has gone away because everyone with e-commerce experience understands I'm paying for the shipping either way. It's just, did you bake that into the product or not? And so this I wanted to figure out, I wanted to play with. And so we ran, so split testing shipping rates is fairly difficult. I could not figure out a good way to do this with Google Optimize. In the Shopify universe, there's 2 tools I found that'll do it, Ship Scout and IntelliGems. There may be others, but they're like 2 apps that will specifically do this one thing. They will test shipping rate thresholds for you. And using that, we tested different thresholds and like free shipping on everything versus no free shipping versus 25, 75, et cetera. And like, obviously this changes. This is another one where no best practice. But what was interesting was we found as you lowered the shipping threshold, certainly checkout conversion rate did go up, but it was like marginal. The differences were nowhere near as huge as one would have thought. And so once you start to factor in profit, which these apps could do, like if to pick, package, ship, and order typically cost me $7, $8, you could put that cost in. And now it's going to start calculating average profit per order using that. And what we discovered was your free shipping threshold should probably go way higher than you think once you factor in profit. Like you'll end up, you may lose a few sales, but you'll end up more profitable overall. Now, this is a tougher one because there's so many factors. Like you really need to test this one for yourself. But for sure, I think like as a rule of thumb, I would take your average order value, tack on 20% to that, and that should be your free shipping threshold. And then if you want to get fancy and if you're on Shopify Plus, certainly go, grab one of these tools and try to test it to figure out the ideal threshold.
Oh, very confusing. Obviously, there's so many factors in there and you can't cover them all. I mean, if I sell something for $300 versus $30, that's going to be a big difference in terms of whether I choose to charge shipping or not.
Yeah, at this point, I like until I've sat down with a spreadsheet and 2 weeks of data, I feel like I'm just making a best guess.
Yeah. What other things, are really standout, easy things that people can do on their Shopify store to improve conversion rate?
All right, this is one that's always is controversial when I bring it up.
Okay.
When you land on any website, like just about anything, there's that big, beautiful hero image. Sometimes it's even a video that's like the first thing that loads at the top of the page. And like the homepage 100% will have that. In e-commerce, a category collectional page will probably have it. Product pages generally won't. The funny thing about it is we split tested this, and every single site, when we got rid of the banner on the collection page, performed better. I thought, And I love the way those banners look. So I'm like, let's try this again. Maybe it's mobile versus desktop. Same deal. Always performs better without it. Maybe it's new versus returning customer. Same deal. Always performs better without it. And the hypothesis, the theory here is pretty simple. The banner is just shoving the products down the page. So if you get the products above the top to the top of the page sooner, people are more likely to scroll and browse and therefore more likely to buy. The same goes on your homepage. Like, I swear to God, the best homepage should just go here's the value proposition. Here is a featured product or a featured collection, and then just let them scroll through it and decide if they're going to buy or not.
So I had to go and look at certain sites. That's why I'm turning my head over here because I'm looking at the other monitor. And because we talked about Ezra, right? And can you hit the button again?
Oh, of course.
Tech nasty.
Tech nasty. Okay. I went to Boom by Cindy Joseph just to see if Ezra, who's, amazing at e-commerce and what he does, and lo and behold, the last thing you said, it's right there. There's a new, fun, natural, no makeup look button right there, and you can sort of see some of the products and all that good stuff. It's interesting, at exitpreneur.io, where I sell the book and whatnot, I've removed the big headline. And first thing my developer said, "Oh no, Joe, you gotta put that big headline back in there." Now, look, I'm just promoting a book. It's a very different thing than a product. Even looking at the Quiet Light site, I was like, "What is it? Are we doing the same thing?" We don't have a whole lot above the fold there. We've got one thing we want people to do, which is get your free valuation on the homepage. So I think we're doing okay there, but there's a lot of space. Like one of the best practices once upon a time was lots of white space. I feel like now that I'm looking at my site, we're stuck in that best practices phase. Would you agree?
Which one? Exitpreneurs?
No, quietlight.com. Don't even look at Exitpreneurs. It's being redesigned. Everybody else should though, and everybody else should go. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's simple. Quietlight.com. Look how much white space there is. Yay or nay? There's one button. We want people to get a valuation. This is a lead generating business, right?
Yes. And so what I would do, if we really want to go ham on the lead generation, you make it what's called a captive site. So like more traditional landing page. So on this site, if you just, for only the homepage, if you just remove that main menu at the top, sell, buy, learn about, success. Now suddenly I got one option, and it's click free valuation. And so that immediately you'll get more people to do it. That's also an easy one to split test.
I guess all the buyers would have a problem with that though, because they want to buy a business and they go to the buy part.
So you'd have to have you could do like a text button, like a text link underneath, get your free valuation, be like, or looking to buy, click here. Okay. And so now it's like a choose your own adventure with just two things. This is another one, like people, at least I'm not saying your main menu is screwed up, but in e-commerce, like I think
if it was, just for the record, wrong. I'd be okay with you saying that. That's all right.
No. In e-com, like we'll see, you go in like a Shopify store and the main menu will be like shop, and everything is jammed underneath that. And then there's like 10 more links. That's like blog, about, FA. The important part is the shopping, and you buried it under 4 little characters in this like big flyout menu. But if I go to like Amazon, any of the big box stores, you look at the main menu, show me one in which a single thing in the main menu does not go to a product or category page. And so like, that's the optimization. That's an easy one. Everybody misses this. It's just like point and click, change your navigation. Don't have to mess with code. Such an easy win. Yeah,
just looking at target.com, and it's all so very, very simple. It's not complicated. Yeah. I feel like that's the theme here right now. Everything you're saying is just simple and logical. It's not rocket science, but people don't do it.
No, I want it. My goal is always not to complicate it. Complicating things is how things break, right? Complex things are more prone to failure. Your conversion funnel it's a process. And so when you could simplify it and get rid of friction, get rid of issues, stumbling blocks, confusion, lo and behold, the whole thing performs better. Well, additionally, managing the site as the business owner also becomes easier. Everything in your life gets easier when you focus on simplicity. And you could mix in a little bit of automation in there, which is not simple, but the end result ends up being simplifying things.
let's complicate it with this question. Browsing history. I see it. I'm not sure. I mean, I understand the algorithm pulls up what I've looked at and things of that nature if I've been on a site, but is this something that can be controlled in any way by the site owner?
Oh, you mean like, so I'll go on Amazon and it'll be like, hey, here's your recently viewed items.
Yeah.
Remember when you were looking at that thing 2 weeks ago?
Right. Can you do
And
that
that's
on a Shopify store too?
Yeah. So a lot of Shopify themes can just produce a recently viewed items list, like it's built in. And if it's not, adding it is not difficult. The recently viewed items widget, like, I earlier said designers like subtle, sophisticated. When I'm on and now I'm saying like, hey, we got to simplify everything. So when I'm on a site and I'm like coming up with split tests, really a lot of my split testing is just like me looking to justify being able to get rid of stuff. Like, I just want to get rid of this. Recently viewed items, definitely one of those things that I want to get rid of. Unfortunately, when I split tested this one, it was a net win. Whereas if I had the recently viewed items on a cart page, I think that's a good spot to put it. If you had like a cart page or the end of a product page, the site always performed better. And it makes sense. Like, oh yeah, this was this thing I was looking at 2 weeks ago.
It'd be like, oh, thank you. Now I don't have to shop for that. It's right there. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'll spend more money.
But when a test doesn't go my way, when it does the thing I don't want it to do.
Fudge the results and lie to your people?
No, which would not be tough, but no. I'll start running it as segments where it's like, okay, is there a further optimization here? Like, is the result different mobile versus desktop and then new versus returning customers? With the recently viewed items widget, it was interesting. When I showed it to new customers, it had a negative effect. And so it's like, it probably because it's on, at that point it's a distraction, right? They've been on the site for minutes and this thing's like, remember that stuff you were looking at 30 seconds ago? So it didn't help. But if I'm a returning visitor, oh yeah, hey, there's this helpful widget. That's the thing I was looking for. Thanks, buddy.
Isn't that
then
a widget?
It becomes helpful.
That's a widget issue. Can't the widget say, don't pull up anything unless it was 12 hours ago? Or is there a time period there?
It depends on the platform and like if you're using an app to implement it. For me, I Google Optimize, in addition to being able to do split tests, you can also have it do personalization where it essentially like the same technology, but it goes, oh, this is a new person to the site. All right, we'll hide that element. Oh, you're a returning visitor? Okay, we're not going to do anything. And so I'll use the personalization feature in Google Optimize to implement stuff like that. If you can't, like ideally I could do it in whatever like widget is running. But if you can't do that, Google Optimize will do it for you.
And this is a stupid question because I think the answer is yes, but Google Optimize can not just only work with Shopify, it can work on all sorts of platforms, right? WordPress, so on and so forth.
If you can run Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager on your site, you can use Google Optimize.
Okay, good. I wonder if we've ever used it. Probably not. All right. Okay. Any other knowledge bombs you want to drop before we finish up?
I will say, I think a lot of people worry about, is my site slow? You know what? The answer is probably yes. And also, it does not matter or cost you nearly what you think it does. Like, we have several stores that are into 8 figures. And also, Google is like, this is so slow, we don't even think anyone on the internet's ever loaded it before. Oh, then how did it make $20 million this year, my friends? Now, would that site perform better with a faster site? Maybe. The tough part in e-commerce is like, they are really complex sites that use a lot of JavaScript. And that's the thing that kind of chews through your Google page speed score. But my point is like, a faster site doesn't hurt. A slow site doesn't help, but it is not nearly the detrimental thing that it's been made out to be.
I would think that most people today would think that it's their own internet service that's causing the site to load slow. I could be wrong. That's the first thing I would think. I'm like, damn it, the wireless in the house over in this spot is so slow. I need to move. And by the time I move, it's loaded and it's good. I can shop on that site.
I always do this move. I like just turn airplane mode on and off. Like, all right, that's like my mini reset. Just like, all right, let's just reconnect everything.
That's it, huh? That's really the knowledge bomb right there. That's it.
Sometimes it works too.
So those two, you said we've got 2 8-figure stores and they load really slowly. Are those your clients or are those yours?
No, I personally do not have an e-commerce store.
It'd be a conflict at this point, I would think, unless maybe not. I guess
Years ago we tried. We had some false starts, but it's so time consuming. It was like attention splitting. So you got to commit to, well, all right, what are we doing here? We're going to help clients and build an agency and software, or are we going to try and build an e-commerce store? It really not a thing you can half-ass.
So not half-assing at the agency. Again, your specialty is what? I mean, you talked about a whole bunch of different stuff here. Specialty is what?
Shopify theme development and conversion rate optimization.
Okay. So we talked all about conversion rate optimization, not a whole lot about Shopify theme development. In 60 seconds, what the heck is that?
So with Shopify themes, I would say people really get hung up on like, what's the right theme for X? At this point, if you're installing a new theme from the Shopify theme store, there really is not a wrong choice. They're all going to be online store 2.0 themes, which means they got all the features, all the bells and whistles. And if it's a paid theme, it's probably fantastic. I don't think there's a bad one in there. Just pick the one that is closest to the layout and look you want. And then it is not tough to customize them from there.
Cool. Awesome. And the podcast, you've got like 2 million downloads on your podcast, I think. Is that right? And what is the name of the podcast and what the heck do you talk about?
The unofficial Shopify podcast, mostly, we talk all Shopify. We mostly interview Shopify merchants and some Shopify partners. Like we had a lovely woman, Elaine from Quiet Light, on the podcast a few months ago. And but yeah, you're right. We hit 2 million downloads this summer. And really that's brute force. I've been doing it 8 years and over 400 episodes.
Dang, that's a lot. I think we hit 10,000 downloads last month, which is, good for us. We're happy, tiny little niche. We're good. That's a lot of downloads. The unofficial Shopify podcast, right?
That's right.
Awesome. And URL again, ethercycle.com. Check it out, folks. Kurt, thank you so much for all the time you spent with us today, for having Elaine on the podcast, for having that Ezra Firestone button that's just takes it over the top.
Nasty.
Yeah, well,
is he saying get nasty
you.
or tech nasty?
That's too nice. Thank you.
All right, man. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon, okay?